Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military of a Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the USA. We have a lot of interesting statements made by the President Trump. He said that Zelensky is gonna have to make a deal, insists Trump, and Europe is going to have to stop buying oil from Russia. So now it's become clear what exactly the United States of America will try to get by the end of 2025. It doesn't mean that he will be able to do this, but now we see the Trump's main focus. Later, he added that, these are two people, Zelensky and Putin, who hate each other, and it looks like I'll have to sit in the same room with them because they can't be together. So most likely, and probably he is right. And for example, when talking about the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, according to information we have, he is ready for this meeting. During his interview, he stated that I'm ready to meet with Trump and Putin without any conditions, Zelensky in an interview. But the problem is that during his next statement, he told us that I cannot go to Moscow, the capital of a country that is attacking us. So we see that there is some problems. There are some problems between his statements. During his first statement, he stated that I can meet without any conditions, and during his second statement, he is making these conditions by refusing to meet with Putin on the territory of the Russian Federation in Moscow. And of course, his key statement during this interview is that Europe and the United States need to stop thinking about themselves and their future with the Russians and think more about Ukraine. Every day of their trade, what sanctions to impose costs us many lives. It's not fair. I would like to say, Zelensky, that war is not a fair thing itself. So it's very interesting that you have realized this just in 2025, by the end of 2025. Anyway, let's continue, and now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates. And first we're going to continue with the Zaporizhia offensive operation, with the Zaporizhia direction, and with the Russian offensive operation. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. Now, it's very important to understand what exactly is happening there. So, as we discussed in the previous videos, here we see the group of forces east of the armored force of the Russian Federation that are moving currently from the area of the village of Velika Novosovka, this is the Mokry Yala River, in the western direction towards the road R85. And there are three Russian armies. The 36th Army that is operating in the northern direction. There is 29th Army that is working in the central part of this, let's say, offensive road. And we have the 5th Army that is located in the southern part of this offensive operation. During the previous days, let's say, since the beginning of August and during September, the Russians of 36th and 29th Army were mainly attacking Ukraine positions. So during the previous months, the main activities and the main Russian progress on the ground was recorded exactly along these roads of attacks. And this is very important to understand because during the first stage of Russian offensive operation, the Russians were trying to exhaust as much as possible Ukrainian units in this area, and most likely somewhere by the beginning of the 15th of September of 2025, the Russians managed to achieve this goal. They exhausted Ukrainian units, the Ukrainian forces, so that is why Syrskyi was forced to announce the evacuation from this area with the purpose to bring forth fresh forces to stabilize the situation. And now we see that the 36th and the 29th Army are slowing down. They stop their offensive. They don't stop their offensive, but they're not moving so fast in the western direction. Now they're fighting for the villages of Berezovka, Kalinovska, maybe the village of Stepova, and it seems that they're not going to move further, at least for some period of time, while Ukrainians will counterattack them. But at the same time, we see that the 5th Russian Army that was not moving, that was not so active during the first stage of offensive operation, now has activated themselves, and now they're moving further and further in the western direction. For example, just yesterday we got these changes on the map. A day before yesterday we got changes of the map in the vicinity of Olgovska. All these changes were made based on the geolocations and videos, and today, by the morning of the 17th of September of 2025, we received additional batch of changes on the map. Also also in the area of responsibilities of the 5th Army of the Group of Forces East. As you can see, according to information we have, according to neutral mappers, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to improve their positions in the area of the village of Novaya Ivanovka, and the most important, the Russians managed to establish complete control over this dense network of fortifications. As you can see, this is the most fortified area probably in the entire area of the special military operation. Huge trenches, huge fortifications, hundreds of square kilometers and something like this, and this territory was taken by Russians according to pro-Russian resources. Furthermore, the Russians managed to improve their positions further in the northwestern direction from the village of Olgovskaya. And once again, this is the area of the 5th Army's responsibility. So, which means that most likely the Russians, during the next stage of the offensive operation, have two tasks. The first task, the 26th and the 36th Army will continue exhausting Ukrainian army and Ukrainian reserves that have arrived in this area, and the 5th Army will continue their offensive operation towards the villages and towns of Poltavka, Okhotnichi, and Uspenovka. And as for the village of Uspenovka, today we got this video how Russians began bombing and attacking this territory with aviation, which means that the Russians began preparation before another major offensive operation. And you know that if the information about Russian control over this dense network of the fortifications is correct, so if we summarize everything that was published by pro-Russian resources, this red line is the current line of Russian control. From this configuration of the map, we see that the villages of Poltavka and Okhotnichia are already semi-encircled, which means that the Russians most likely will have no problems to attack these both settlements from the south and from the east and from, of course, the southeastern direction. If this village falls, the next target for the Russians would be the settlement of Uspenovka. So we expect that the Russians, most likely according to information we have, first of all will try to take under complete control these two settlements, and these are very powerful fortified areas. If Russians can do this, then most likely the entire Zaporizhia direction will collapse automatically, and of course the city of Guliapole would fall in Russian hands also within months. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. And first let's talk about the city of Pokrovsk itself. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. Several very reliable pro-Russian resources reported that once again the Russians began their assault operation on the city of Pokrovsk. And according to my raw estimation, this is a third attempt of the armed forces of the Russian Federation to improve their positions in the southern and the southwestern parts of the city. So based on this report, we made some changes. This is very interesting. Now, as you can see, the Russians are trying to improve their positions in the western part of the city to take under control the cemetery, the central cemetery, to take under control this residential area, and basically to maintain the line between the settlement of Otlina along the railways, along T0406 road, and the western part of the city. So Russians, it seems, are trying to maintain their positions here. This will allow them to shorten the distance to the main logistic road that goes in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk, 052425 road. Furthermore, the Russians continue their attempts to infiltrate themselves in the eastern part and in the central part of the city, trying to outflank some citadels that is located in the central and the southern parts of the city. So this is the third attempt. Of course, Ukrainians will try to counterattack Russians. We believe that this offensive operation, the third offensive operation carried out by the Russians, is also tasked to slow down the Ukrainian counterattacks in the area of breakthrough. And now Ukrainians will be forced to introduce additional reinforcements and reserves in this area with the purpose to stabilize the situation. As for the area of breakthrough, during the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. This is the situation by the end of the 16th of September. Neutral mappers reported that Ukrainians secured the village of Poltavka, and by the beginning of the 17th of September, additional changes were recorded as well. The Ukrainians moved further in the western direction and secured the territory around the village of Pankovka and this complex network of fortifications. Furthermore, the Russians continued their offensive operation in the direction of Shakhovo-Uspenovka from the east. We will not watch this video due to significant number of casualties and violence, but the Russians took under control additional trenches and fortifications. Another important video was published by Ukrainian sources from this point, and this is the settlement of Novotoretskaya. We will not watch this video as well due to violence and many violence, too much violence there. But according to this video, Russians were ambushed exactly in this point by Ukrainian soldiers, and during the video we might see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in short combat. So when summarizing this video, we see that most likely Ukrainians have possibilities to access this territory with sabotage and reconnaissance group, and if this information is correct, then telling the truth, the situation for the Russians is becoming very difficult, because if Ukrainians are able to establish control over these trenches and fortifications, then most likely the Russians would start suffering huge problems, and we might say that this could be the first cauldron for the armed force of the Russian Federation created by Ukrainians since the beginning of the special military operation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 12 hours, as you can see, we made significant changes on the ground. According to information we have, the Russians secured completely the trenches and fortifications in the southeastern part of the city of Konstantinovka. We came to this conclusion based on this video published by Ukrainian forces. Here we can see lots of FPV drone attacks on Russian positions on the territory of the Konstantinovsky Dacha. So this territory was under very heavy fire. Based on this, we came to the conclusion that this pocket collapsed. Maybe there are still some pockets of resistance, but they're very minimal and very small, and most likely the Russians will finish clearing of them during the next several days. At the same time, we got video from the area of M32 road between the city of Konstantinovka and Bakhmut. Here we can see the same story. Ukrainians were attacking Russian positions in this area, which means that most likely this stronghold also came in Russians' hands, which means that the most important and the most powerful defense line in the southeastern part of the city of Konstantinovka collapsed and fell in Russians' hand, which means that most likely in coming days the Russians will continue offensive operation, but this time in the direction of the city limits itself. As for the Lyman direction, during the previous 24 hours, during the previous 12 hours, additional changes were also recorded. The Russians continue bombing and attacking and destroying Ukrainian logistics. Today we got to this picture, and according to pro-Russian resources, pontoon bridges and bridge along the TO514 road was completely destroyed. So the Russians are doing this with the purpose to ruin Ukrainian logistics and to reduce their capabilities. Furthermore, several neutral mappers reported that the Russians secured at least the eastern part of the settlement of Yampol. We are talking about these farms. So now the Russians have a foothold to continue offensive operation further in the direction of the Yampol itself. And of course, neutral mappers confirmed that currently there are very heavy clashes for this territory. Ukrainians are trying to counterattack, and the sources are saying, both pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian, that Ukrainians are not counting losses and their resources and reserves with the purpose not to allow the village of Yampol to fall in Russians' hands. So there are very heavy clashes, and this is another strategical battle. If Russians, as we discussed, are able to take this village under control and to force the Ukrainians to fall back, most likely the city of Siversk would fall automatically. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.